Anyway, so when we decided this is nuts and we've got authoritarian governments controlling what we're doing with no logic to it, like it would be nice if they were caring, but this is nothing caring about this. So then we said, well, let's actually formally not just build these communities that are kind of this way. It's like these are the pillars of our thought, and that's what they're going to be based on, and they're going to be, no wavering from that.
What this is much, consistent with the Bitcoin ethos, is actually just decentralization of governance. It means the ability to make your own rules on a local level. And one of the most effective mechanisms for that has really been the evolution of special zones.
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Why don't we start with, I've literally got absolutely no objective here except Veritas Villages and all the new stuff that's going on. So maybe we should start there. From the latest. I mean, obviously, I know quite a bit about Veritas Villages because I'm following. You're sponsoring us. You're one of our sponsors, which is great. But there's also a hell of a lot I don't know. And you made an announcement at this conference already, which I did see. Maybe you could just quickly, briefly, from the Veritas Village side, just briefly run over that. But start with what's going on at Veritas Villages.
All right. Well, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you absolutely fine, Patrick.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Tim, for having us on the show. It's nice to be back. Pretty much exactly a year later, I guess.
It is actually.
Yeah.
It was and to be honest, a massive amount has changed in that year. I do actually remember you saying actually when we spoke before that there were some things in the pipeline and stuff.
Yeah, there's been lots of things in the pipeline. We acquired a property in Nicaragua that we had designed it and we're developing it anyway, but with a joint venture. But we've decided not to do joint ventures anymore. Veritas Villages are 100% ours, so we bought out the partner, and now it's Veritas Village Playa Pacifica on the beach in Nicaragua. We're continuing to build homes in Veritas Village Coronado in Panama. We announced Veritas Village Chiriquí, which is also in Panama, closer to the Costa Rican border. A lot of people know where Boquete is. It's a pretty popular tourist area or expat living area in Panama, so it's close to that. And then we just acquired a massive property, massive for our standards, in Costa Rica, in the Atenas area, and it's got the unique claim to fame of being named the best climate in the world by National Geographic. And we actually have 3 different climate zones inside our property, so it's based on elevation. So you can actually kind of choose your climate in that particular one. So it's very cool.
Wait a minute. What is that? How big do you have to be to have 3 climates?
Well, it's a unique spot. So it's 140 some hectares, 340 acres or so. Probably be over 500 residences, and it's on an elevation going, from top to bottom, around 800 to 900 meters in the top and 400 or 500 at the bottom. So that just happens to create temperate zones and different types of zones. So literally the temperature you can kind of pick, if you like it, to be 28 degrees during the day and 22 at night. You can get maybe in the middle. If you want it to be a little cooler, you go to the top. You want to have a home at the bottom, it's going to be more tropical. So it's kind of got a lot of unique features. And then we're just in the permitting stage there, really hoping that maybe by August of next year we'll have the permitting all done and the master planning all done, and that will start building homes there too. But that's going to be a game changer for us, that just based on the size, and of course we're looking in Argentina right now, Argentina, Mexico, and Ecuador, and possibly Belize as well. So we're kind of looking around, and we will be expanding more and more. The nice thing about the Veritas Village is I think it's kind of differentiates itself from a lot of the freedom-oriented communities, is that when you have more than one, it's kind of like a points club or whatever. You can go to any one of them as a member of the Veritas Village Club, and you get the discounts at the restaurants, and you can use the amenities and all those sorts of things. So it's not just like, oh, I lock myself into this. And we actually have clients that are buying homes in more than one. So they can say, I'm going to spend this part of the year in this one because I like the climate there during that time, and I'm going to move to this one. So you could be in the hills of Panama to the beach of Nicaragua, and ultimately, the Caribbean as well. And so it gives people options. I've been doing this for 2 decades, and it's tough if you only have one place. You're trying to pigeonhole them into something all the time, and it's like, well, I don't want that. And it's like, I don't want to be selling something to somebody that they don't want. So
140 acres, that is...
140 hectares.
Sorry, 140 hectares, yes. Even more. That is that's a very large area. Obviously, that's the biggest opportunity you've ever taken on.
Yeah, I've been looking at in Costa Rica for 4 years for a property. I've probably seen maybe over 100 properties. And then this one came up, and it checks all the boxes, and it had so much going for it. It's in exactly the area we wanted it, and it was the last large tract of land in the Autris area, and we were just pretty lucky to get it, to be honest. So,
what was it before then?
A farm.
A farm?
Yeah.
One farm?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff?
Cattle, mostly.
Really?
So
I was just thinking it was covered in trees.
Half of it is a coffee plantation too. So that's kind of cool because we're going to have every one of our communities has a little bit of a theme. So that one's kind of coffee themed, where we're going to have Veritas Village coffee. Residents can give them bags away to their friends and things like that.
So you're going to keep some of the coffee plantation going?
Yeah, we have to keep a certain amount of green area anyway, so that actually counts. So there's certain trees you can't cut down, certain species of trees, and we also want to have a large percentage of green space and hiking, and there's beautiful waterfalls and rivers on the property. It's spectacular. I mean, it's really beautiful.
What's the time scale on that one?
Like I said, we acquired it this last summer, and permitting can take a year to 18 months. So, Costa Rica really considers themselves a very green country, probably more than any other country in the world. And so the environmental and climate change permitting and all that is a draining process. Like we have to write about an 800, 900 page application. So it's a lot of work, but we've got, all the people that we've talked to are very bullish about us getting maybe next, like August, September time frame.
So they knew exactly what the plan was right from the start. But
the beauty of it too, for a change for us, is it's actually already registered as an urban area, because Autris, the town, which is a really quaint, a little Latin American town that's the typical ones with a cathedral on one side and a park on the other, the same design that they all have. But it's very much more authentic. It's not been like the Costa Rican beach towns that are sort of gringo towns at this point, right? So the nice thing too, it's half an hour to the beach, it's half an hour to the airport in San Jose, and it still feels extremely isolated. And
so with that much land though, are you, Alex, I'll be coming to you soon, mate, don't worry.
Thanks for coming out.
Moral support. With that much land, are you thinking about creating quite a lot of amenities on there as well?
Yeah, exactly. We have a lot of things that are already going. Obviously, the restaurants, and it has a nice little mini lake pond on it, so that will become a tilapia pond. We're going to put a dock out into it where you can go fishing and things like that. And the natural amenities are amazing. Like I said, the waterfalls, and we'll have one of the restaurants right beside the waterfalls. So, I could picture people getting married there and stuff like that too.
What about things like stuff that you get on a slightly grander scale, like medical facilities and all that kind of stuff?
Well, even in the smaller ones in Coronado, we're going to have a small clinic, school. Mikkel's Expat Money School is going to have its first physical school there. The rest of it's been online.
Really?
Yeah. And so
the Expat Money School?
Yeah.
But not for kids, right? For grown-ups?
No, it's for kids.
Is it?
Yeah. We're trying to get to kids early.
Teaching them about
get rid of the woke part
theory.
And get them back into libertarians.
Right, that's it. So, all right, just like I say, Alex, we'll be coming to you, but can you give me an overview of each place, like Coronado, Cherokee, this Autris and the Playa Pacifica, and what it actually is like there now? And like, how many buildings are there? What's there? This kind of stuff.
Yeah, well,
because they're all different environments. Like you got sea, mountain, kind of,
So Playa Pacifica, Veritas Village Playa Pacifica is in Nicaragua. It's the closest beachfront area to the Managua airport, so it's 45 minutes to get there. To me, it's one of the most beautiful beachfronts in the world. It's just like, and not very many people on the beach. So it's a beautiful surfing. There's different kinds of surfing. There's a reef break. There's a sand break. So if you're into surfing, it's easy right to the most challenging kind of surf you can have. And so we're actually a neighborhood inside a larger resort. And so we have all the things that we have in a typical Veritas Village. We have a separate orchard and garden for sustainability. But the beauty of that is you also have, restaurants and hiking trails and a golf course and all that stuff is part of it that is accessible by everybody that's a Veritas Village resident. And so, it's a beautiful beachfront. So for swimming and kayaking, there's a river that runs through it as well. And so that's a really pretty beachfront. It's a little bit harder to grow things on the beach to be sustainable. So the gardens are further back, but they're still within the greater property, which is nice.
And how many places to live are there on there?
On the overall property now, there's probably 400-ish homes.
On
ours, our community is just starting up, so it's a dozen, 15 maybe. But it feels like one big community, right? So.
But that community started before the Veritas Village idea sort of evolved fully, right?
Yeah, exactly. We kind of made it into a Veritas Village by adding, our first philosophy, the FIRST, the freedom, independence, resilience, sustainability, and transparency. That's the pillars of our focus now. So when I look at sustainability and it's a beachfront, I was like, well, we have to create orchards and gardens and stables and things like livestock, and so that we had to push back a bit because it's hard to grow bananas and mangoes and things right in the sand on the beach. So, but now it's a absolutely normal type of Veritas Village. So that's the beachfront one. But
does it? One more question. Sorry. Does it have does it have a kind of barrier around the Veritas Village bit? Or
the barrier is really the river. So the river is the border on both sides. The river comes towards, if you're at the beach end, the river comes towards the beach and then splits. And it's actually, the overall property is 2,400 acres. So it's
really
900 hectares.
Wow. And you're planning on putting how many more places on?
About 60 more homes on our part of it. So in the Veritas part of it. So.
And how much of that is can people still invest in now?
Like I said, there's about a dozen or a little bit more than a dozen homes there now. We built a few model homes there too, so that you can actually buy one today and move in tomorrow if you wanted to.
Oh, right, okay.
So, yeah. And then if we move over to Chiriquí, Chiriquí's a bit of a smaller one. The Chiriquí is the name of the province in Panama. Then it's a very, very popular expat spot. People go to Boquete and Caldera and Chiriquí area. There are volcanoes there, so they can get higher in the mountains, and you get. For me, it's the really high. Boquete is quite high up in elevation. It rains a little bit too much for me, and it's a little too cold. I came from Vancouver Island in Canada. I didn't move to the tropics to be rainy and cold. So we purposely are in Bugaba, which is a town just outside of town on a lower elevation, about 300 meters instead of 900 meters. We don't get the rain. We're close to the beach. We're kind of half an hour drive to Boquete, a half an hour drive to the beach, so it's kind of the best of both worlds. And Boquete's got a lot of little cool shops and things like that, just because it's been an expat center forever. And that's a smaller one, total of maybe 30 or 40 homes on it, but it had, there's some things, that one's got a beautiful river that runs through it as well. And what I really like about it is we designed the community orchards and gardens to be like a shop, like a grocery store. It's got aisles, and we trained all the plants to grow up the sides, and you literally walk down the aisle and pick your oranges and your bananas. And
but stuff. That's already there, or that's in the design
a good
stage.
chunk of it is already existing. We keep planting more, but people always ask me, so when is this one going to be done? It's like, when is a town done? When's a city done?
So how many houses are there at Chiriquí then?
Like I said, there's only about 25 now or something like that, or less. But we have an option to acquire the space beside it too. So depending on how popular that one becomes, we'll probably expand it. And then there's the one that in Coronado in Panama. That's about an hour drive out of the city. One of my favorite areas there. We're, again, up in the hills. There's Anton Valley, which is a very popular destination in Panama. We're just beside that. So we get it's in what they call the dry corridor. Is kind of the weather comes from the Caribbean side, hits the mountains, drops all its rain, comes over the mountains, and it's drier. And you get a lot of rain in Panama, so to find a dry spot is nice. So, but it's still beautiful. You get enough rain for the orchards and gardens there too. And that one, much like the Costa Rican one, we have the tilapia pond, we have the stream that goes through it, we have music studios, we have woodworking studio and different types of things, stables for horses, boarding horses and stuff like that, chicken coops for the eggs and that sort of stuff. So.
And how many places?
That one's around 100 homes.
And currently, people building.
Yeah, we just got the permits a few months ago to actually start building. Panama's trying to model itself like Costa Rica, and literally halfway through our permitting, they introduced the climate change department, and we had to start our environmental permitting all over again. But we have, I would say, about 25 homes that are going to be starting. Well, we've got 5 getting close to finish. We were allowed to build 5 homes as model homes, sort of for the purpose of showing people what the community is going to be like. And so those are almost done. And now we're starting. I mean, it's almost sold out. So it's hard to say how many homes we're going to have built by this time next year.
And it's up to the people that buy the plots to build their own home.
No, we built the homes. We didn't used to, but we've changed a few things. The 3 things I say that are important for us now is we build the homes because we want people to have a good quality home when they get there, because it's very difficult to hire a Latin American construction group and not be there, and you're going to get like rebar that's too small, and it's just going to happen, right? And we also have our own turnkey. We have Veritas RPM. RPM stands for Rental and Property Management. We used to have other property managers handle the communities, but if they do a poor job and they don't clean the houses properly and rentals, and people come there and they're not happy, it reflects poorly on the community. So we've decided to take that over and manage it ourselves in all the Veritas Villages. And then we have a 2-year build period. So we have a whole bunch of more than a dozen home models that people really like. I'm pretty proud of our architectural group, and we have a lot to pick from, but it's a freedom-oriented community. If you want to design your own home, you can do that. And so we also, are building them for the quality reason. But we have a 2-year build period because what I've noticed after a couple of decades of doing this, there's a lot of developments that just get 2 or 3 homes done, and then they stop there. And like some developer thought he was a developer, and he sold to his sister and his dentist or something, and that's where it stops. And you see them littered all over Central America with home construction or resorts like that just never happen. And then you can't support them because nobody's paying HOA fees, and you can't keep the place looking nice, and it just turns into a ghost town. So in order to not have that happen ever for us, we have the right to buy your property back for what you paid for it after 2 years if you haven't started construction.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's it. So, okay. And you are anticipating everyone's just going to...
Yeah, I mean, the people have been... the people haven't been the bottleneck. The climate change department has been the bottleneck, and so now that we have that permit, it's really starting to rocket. I think there's a couple homes that will be actually done before the end of this year. So people definitely in 2026 we'll have people living there.
Great. And there was one more, wasn't there? Oh, Costa Rica, obviously.
Yeah.
Nothing there yet.
Nothing there, just in permitting there. Like I said, Costa Rica's pretty retentive about their permitting, so we're on a good track, though. It's going faster than I actually expected, so that's good.
Alex.
Hi, Tim.
Hello, mate. You're here as well. I didn't notice you there. Hi. So why are you here, Alex?
I'm here because amongst all the other things that Autris has been doing...
we should probably... Autris is the parent company of Veritas Village.
Yes.
Autris is your original company.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And it's the public company, AUTR, on the stock exchange, and we acquired BitCorp, which was Alex and Titus.
Okay, Alex's company, right.
Exactly.
Why?
Well, the reason for the acquisition is really the vision of Patrick aligned with the vision that Titus and I had in founding BitCorp. It really stems from the concept of the Bitcoin Treasury company. It's quite a phenomena that is taking place, I don't know, over the last, call it 6 to 12 months. Obviously a little bit longer too if you consider the case study of strategy or MicroStrategy. This was something we had somewhat glanced over, I would say. Not that we were against it, it just didn't really dig in and take the time to really understand it. But after, really taking some time to look at it based on, some interactions we've had in the general free city space, I thought it does make some sense. It does make some sense to try to do this, but not all of the narratives that you hear in the space make sense. I think there is a lot of financialization. There's a lot of Wall Street changing around cash flows, securitizing things. I'm not so sure I'm a big believer in much of that, but I'm a huge believer in Bitcoin over the long term. And I am very much convinced that this concept of a corporate entity that can have leverage, but over a long duration. So it's not like buying an ETF with 2 times leverage where it just goes up twice as much and down twice as much the very next day. It's leverage over, potentially a decade or even, multiple decades that really helps the corporate entity be an efficient vehicle to accumulate Bitcoin faster than an individual could accumulate Bitcoin while being immune from the cycles of Bitcoin and these roughly 4-year cycles that we've seen.
The thing about Bitcoin treasury companies, obviously I'm in the Bitcoin world a lot, and there's a massive distrust of whenever you mention the word Bitcoin treasury company, apart from MicroStrategy and obviously probably Metaplanet. People always give them, they give MicroStrategy a pass because it's just like obvious. And then they go, oh, and Metaplanet. And then everyone else. And you do see a lot of them doing really badly. And what, my conclusion from looking at all this is that a Bitcoin treasury company, in inverted commas, that works is a company that basically has a business and is stacking Bitcoin in a treasury. But it's almost like, I wouldn't call that a Bitcoin treasury company. The treasury companies, I think, are the ones that just start a company to buy Bitcoin, like MicroStrategy kind of did. But I know they had a business as well, which was generating, 50 million a year or whatever. But so are you really, is it really is that just the terminology of it?
Well, if I can jump in for one thing, I just want to clarify that, Autris is a real company building Veritas Villages.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I mean. Yeah,
and we have never actually bought Bitcoin. We sell our homes in Bitcoin. So every Bitcoin that we've stacked is been through transactions. So, but we are huge believers in Bitcoin, just as Alex mentioned. And so whether you want to call it a Bitcoin treasury or whatever, we keep a certain amount of our treasury in Bitcoin. And, in the past, we've set limits, so, 20%, 30%. Frankly, if we were only developing in El Salvador and I could pay construction companies with Bitcoin, that's all we would have. I have zero faith in fiat. So, that's the reason. And, fortunately so, we sold homes when Bitcoin was at 40,000. Now we're at 110 today or whatever it is. It's been good for the company, right? We had a 500% increase in our Bitcoin holdings over the last year. So,
well, also, I've spoken to a number of real estate people actually on this podcast since recently, and everyone seems to acknowledge now that having a Bitcoin treasury is an essential part of any business. If you have any business, even if you kind of get an investment of 20 million or 30 million, you should take a pocket of that and put it in Bitcoin for the long term. That should be your strategy.
5 years
anyway.
ago when we started doing that, everybody thought we were lunatics, though.
Yeah, well, I know you were ahead of the game. That's pretty cool. But now, like I say, it's especially amongst the real estate people, it's very common to think that. But really, what it is every business. Whatever business you're starting, you should have a treasury, because it will allow you, as long as you can think long term and you're not going to spend it too quickly, it's part of your business model going forwards, because it will end up helping you to invest and stuff. But I don't think you're not a treasury company, but you're calling it a treasury, right?
We are. I mean, I think you're exactly right. Our view is definitely you need an operating company, and we simply hold Bitcoin in our treasury. I would say we are a treasury company to the extent that we are familiar with the tactics and the mechanisms that people can use to create Bitcoin yield, as it's called, so increase the amount of Bitcoin on a per share basis. We can and will do some of this over time, but it's simply not the priority right now. We are too small at Autris and too focused on developing real estate. So it is really a vehicle for stacking at this point. And so to the extent that that's not a Bitcoin treasury, then sure, we're also not.
But so when everyone talks about MNAV, if you're in a treasury company's always gone about MNAV. This is how I think I understand it. Tell me if I'm wrong. You're the finance guy. MNAV is the valuation of your company versus the valuation of your Bitcoin holdings. And if it's 1, if the MNAV is 1, they're the same. And if it's less than 1, it means you're not generating enough income from your company. If it's more than 1, your company is generating good income. Is that, loosely speaking, how it works?
Well, it's very close. I mean, that is how it should trade. That's right. My background, even before, one of my first jobs actually was working for an asset manager in Chicago called Ariel Investments. And the focus of Ariel Investments, at least the fund that I was working in, was something called deep value. Deep value is not just value stocks like Warren Buffett would try to find, but actually often money-losing stocks that had a balance sheet of, call it $1 million, but every year they lose $25,000. And so then what you're trying, and the market has valued the company quite low as a result. And the question that you're trying to figure out as an analyst in this sector is not the growth, actually. What you're trying to figure out is what is the stock of money versus the amount that they lose through bad management every year. And if they're slightly less bad at management over time, then actually the stock could increase in price, even though they're losing money. This is how the markets are treating the valuation of these sorts of all companies, but in particular, this, I think this analogy helps me understand this MNAV concept. You can trade at a 1 MNAV when you are not generating any income, but you're also you have no expenses, nothing. So I have 10 shares on the balance sheet, and I have 10 Bitcoins, and there we go. We don't nothing changes over time. But the MNAV should actually be higher than 1 if I am able to generate enough cash flow through an operating business or through Metaplanet is selling options or through financial structuring, mechanisms that Strategy and others are doing to actually create income to increase the amount of Bitcoin that I can generate for my company while the shares remain the exact same. To the extent I'm losing money, I should trade at an MNAV of below 1.0. And that's the sort of interesting dichotomy we've seen when this was really hot 6 months ago. People were trading at MNAVs of 6, 7, 8. Well, when you traded at an MNAV of that level or higher, you should definitely be issuing shares into the market, using those proceeds to buy Bitcoin, and you're able to accumulate more Bitcoin on a per share basis, which increases the performance of the company.
And is it fair to say, it's fair to say that over the period since the Treasury company idea has kind of memed into existence, people are starting to work out that it's a bad idea, unless you're MicroStrategy, to be a pure Treasury company, because Bitcoin's too volatile at the moment, and you're going to end up getting...
Especially if you're leveraged.
Well, right, yeah. Which it kind of is leverage, though, isn't it? It is, isn't it? Because is leverage by its nature almost.
Well, you're giving away custody. Of course, you can self-custody your own Bitcoin, but you can't self-custody your own shares, at least as of now. So you're giving, you have other managers, in this case, Autris, that is holding the keys to the Bitcoin, that you hold indirectly through it.
But so, yeah. And like I say, the realization has been, this is my realization just from listening to podcasts, is that people are realizing that it's important to have a business, not just become a treasury company, but really, like you say, which is why I kind of wonder whether it's even a treasury company. It's certainly not until you're actually creating products that you're using, as in financial products that you're using, then that's the treasury bit, right? So to begin with, you're stacking Bitcoin and having it on your balance sheet, and then if a certain time comes, then you start creating financial products the idea, obviously, of the treasury company is to beat the price of Bitcoin, right, as well.
Yep.
Am I getting that right? Is that the kind of base layer of it? The whole point of it is to beat, because Bitcoin's a pretty good investment.
Otherwise, you just buy Bitcoin itself.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. It's a pretty good investment anyway.
That's exactly right. And that's why the MNAV, if you're not able to accumulate Bitcoin faster, should be at 1, or actually probably less than 1, because you're no longer holding the keys to it and you're giving up, you have counterparty risk and all of these sorts of things. But the idea really is that, I think you're right. You're seeing this trend. MNAVs were very high. It was hot. It was a bit of a bubble. They've come down. In my opinion, they've crashed down in many cases too low, because they're now trading at MNAVs of a third, which means effectively I can buy 1 Bitcoin for 1/3 of the price by buying the stock. Now, it's not a perfectly apples to apples comparison, because I'm not actually buying the Bitcoin. I'm buying the company that holds the Bitcoin, and I'm trusting that they won't lose the keys, that they are not going to spend money, wildly and lose a bunch of money over the next number of years, et cetera. But, a third versus, I can get 1 Bitcoin for a third of the price. That seems to me to be quite substantial, but it matters on a individual company basis.
And as far as MicroStrategy goes, as the best example of a treasury company, is this correct as well? This is what I understand about the way their business operates. Forget the old. Actually, it's strategy now, isn't it? Forget their old business. But the Bitcoin side of it is basically they're buying Bitcoin and giving people a 10% yield on a product that they're getting a much bigger yield on, which is the Bitcoin. And the people that are buying the 10% yield are just people who either don't know what Bitcoin is, don't care, they just want 10% yield, which is a pretty good yield anyway. Meanwhile, MicroStrategy are taking that money and buying Bitcoin with it, which year on year has a much bigger yield than that. Is that how it works?
Effectively, that is. And actually, during periods of time, Bitcoin does not outperform the 10% yield. And we've seen that, MicroStrategy stock or strategy stock has gotten hit quite a bit in the market at the moment because of this sort of thing, as well as other sentiments, of course. But absolutely, this is true. The bet from Michael Saylor is that over the long term, he wants the Bitcoin. He's willing to pay out, in order to get your capital to use that to invest in Bitcoin. He's willing to pay you out at a certain coupon, over time, in order to have his exposure to Bitcoin. And, of course, he's been proven 100% correct in this for, 4 or 5 years. I think he is, generally speaking, correct about this over the long term, but it is somewhat new territory.
Hence the idea that, because they've already done it, and they have the economy of scale now, they have the complete, ability to keep doing it. Whereas if you want to start doing it now, you really need an operating business to sort of, be the backbone
Flatten the curves.
Yeah, exactly.
If Bitcoin dropped in half today, it doesn't matter to me at all. Our business is what keeps us going, and in fact, we would be acquiring Bitcoin in that case.
It's better for us if Bitcoin halves. We can buy twice as much.
Yeah. So where do you? So apart from people buying property for Bitcoin, is the idea to buy Bitcoin as well?
Well, now with BitCorp,
Yeah.
Absolutely. We want to be really not just a Bitcoin treasury company, but a holistic Bitcoin company. We're creating Bitcoin Citadels in the form of Veritas Villages. We're holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We would like to enter the field of this sort of Bitcoin treasury company at the right time, at the right place, and in a strategic manner. We want to mine Bitcoin with the energy produced at Veritas Villages. We want the people in the Veritas Villages to use it as a medium of exchange. We're potentially thinking of looking at developing the HOA rules for these villages on a Bitcoin sidechain. through a DAO, that sort of thing. So yeah, we're really trying to become the holistic Bitcoin Citadel, that Bitcoiners are talking about, the place where, we're doing everything on Bitcoin and with Bitcoin, but also with Bitcoiners. That's absolutely the idea of joining forces with Autris and BitCorp.
Right. That is interesting.
So I guess I actually misspoke before when I said the only Bitcoin we have is from sales. It's actually a little bit from mining too, because we're, as far as I know, the only solar-powered mining company in Latin America. So,
and is it true that each property has the option?
Yeah. In fact, I mean, the goal, honestly, when we started testing the mining on solar systems, is that most of the solar systems, well, backing up a little bit, we tried an experiment with a solar farm and everybody getting their power from the farm. It would actually be a lot less expensive for us to do it that way, because it's, at any given time, maybe there's 80% of the people living there, 20% are somewhere else where they're not using power. But the people didn't like it. So it's like, no, well, John's using more power than I am. And so these are independent people, privacy-oriented people, and they're also, from a sustainable or resiliency standpoint, they want their own system. So if John's goes down, mine didn't. And so we have to build these systems for each home. It comes with the homes when you buy them. We're very expert, knowledgeable in these systems now. We experiment with different ones every week. But, because we have to build for the peak usage, like New Year's Eve, everybody's partying all night and using a lot of battery power that was created during, the storage during the day in the panels. We have to overbuild these systems, frankly. And so there's a lot of excess generated power that on a normal day is not used. So we started offloading that to the Bitcoin miners. And so anybody can do that with their system. And the goal when I started doing this as an experiment was there's only really two expenses after you buy your home in a Veritas Village, because your food and your water and everything's free. Your expenses are out of our control in one case, which is property tax, which is very low in Latin America. I mean, it would be less than $1,000 a year most of the time. But the other one is their HOA fees. In order to keep the communities beautiful, we have to have a homeowners association. As Alex mentioned, we're doing that on a DAO and with quadratic voting, which we can talk about too, which I find very interesting. But if the Bitcoin miner does nothing else but pay for your property tax and your HOA fees, it's reached my goal of a net whopping zero for cost.
So you don't build the houses with a miner included, right?
No, we don't. We've talked about it, like we kind of have a catalog of options, so we can throw that in there. The issue is on some of those things that they change so fast. Like the miner we bought 6 months ago is outdated now. It's just slower than everything that's on the market. So it's kind of, to me, it's like buying a phone or a laptop. You got to just bite the bullet at some point and buy it because you need to use it.
But we make it up in the cost of electricity because it is
zero. I mean,
it's literally zero.
Almost every miner in the world has got this massive expensive power, unless you got lucky enough to get the offshoots of a natural gas plant or something that you do get free power. In our case, it's free. Like, I don't really care what Bitcoin's price is as long as I'm mining it for free. So, I mean, in a lot of cases, they have to see, well, I'm losing money because I'm not, if Bitcoin isn't over 100,000, the mining is actually taking more power than I'm gaining from it. In our case, I don't really care what it is because we're always going to make money at it.
But the houses aren't connected all up in a grid. So if someone's house is producing electricity, and what happens when the battery's full? Nothing.
Well, exactly. There's all that excess power. I mean,
but they're not connected. There's no way of.
Well, they can choose to. It's a freedom-oriented community. They can choose to. If 10 neighbors beside each other want to, do net metering between them, they can. We found that they didn't want to, so we didn't force it on them. But so for that reason, it could be 10 in the morning and your batteries are all fully charged again. Like, the power of the sun near the equator is massive, and like I was doing this in Canada, and it'd take 50 panels to produce what I'm getting out of 3 by the equator. So of course the technology changes every week too. They're getting better and better. But yeah, so literally, our welcome center is a good example. That's where in the Coronado property, that's where we have do our Bitcoin mining testing. And usually by 10 a.m., from 6:30 or in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, you're already generating massive amounts of power. By 10 a.m., it's, you don't know what to do with all this power, and it's thousands and thousands of watts. And so It's like, what, the batteries are full. We can keep adding batteries, but it's not going to help. We don't ever use it. We got 60 kilowatt hours in this home anyway. So yeah, might as well use it.
Have you got a system then that would switch a miner on and off?
Exactly. I can do it remotely from here.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a side business right there, isn't it? Just people with miners, just talking to the homeowners and saying, look, the
Bitcoin and the freedom-oriented community Venn diagram overlaps almost 100%. Like everybody in the community is interested in this, and everybody loves the fact, like in Nicaragua, you can go to our restaurant and pay with Bitcoin, right? So we're creating these Bitcoin citadels quietly, that nobody really knows about.
Well, talking of the Bitcoin Citadel concept, what's the latest, your latest thoughts on like sovereignty and independence and that kind of stuff, other than the obvious like energy independence and stuff? Is that something that you think about, talk about, moving towards, talking to anyone in the government about, anything like that?
All the time.
Oh, all the time. All right, okay.
I mean, that's pretty much how Alex and I met, I guess, to be honest, is like talking to governments in Latin America and convincing them to do these things without us having to do it. And you'll see in my presentation this afternoon, I talk on a few slides on this, is a lot of entities, and I would say including Tipolis, come at it from a top-down perspective, right? Like we want this governance, and when you give us this governance, I'm not saying it's we need both approaches. When you come down from the top, we want this governance. And the problem in Latin America is giving away sovereignty on a promise that something might happen is almost impossible. And that's what I was running into all the time. So we've actually turned a page here in the last few months, which is really nice finally, because years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when we sort of started building the Veritas Villages to start with, we tried the same thing. It's because like we want to have our own, I don't know, police force. We want to have government as a service within these walls. And they were just like, you're a lunatic. But I said, look, we're going to create all these jobs. We're going to bring in wealthy expats. These are luxury homes. They're not yurts in the forest, right? And so these people are going to bring their companies here, which they are doing now. We've got guys with snowmobile parts that are moving their companies to our area and living in Veritas, right? So it's totally unrelated to being in the tropics, but because we're near the canal too, and the cost of labor is a tenth of what it is in other countries, or in so-called first world countries. But so now the government's actually, calling me and saying, hey, love what you're doing. You're basically the poster child for the kind of developments we'd like to see. What would it take to convince you to do more or expand? And now I've got their attention to say, well, Alex, come with me. Let's go talk to them about what we would really like. And so I think, in a way, it's happening faster than I was expecting it to, because usually, you got to understand that these governments have been promised a million things from gringos all the time. It's like, and like even when I was saying, there's a sprinkling of failed resorts all over the place. So they look at that and they go, yeah, this guy also wanted a bunch of things, and look, good, he made 3 homes, right? So their jobs didn't happen and all those things. So I understand their position, and to give away sovereignty for countries like this that have, gone through, they're going the right direction. They've gone through communism or socialism, and they're really eating up capitalism now, and that's great. And they're certainly going from far left to much more centric or a little bit right these days. You got Noboa in Ecuador, you got Millei as a libertarian in Argentina. So the countries I had a heat map at one point where 20 years ago, how socialist they were, and all the countries there that have gone to more capitalist, and it was very interesting. But anyway, so it's a process, but like I said, I'm pleased with the fact that they're actually starting to pay a little bit of attention to us, and for us to go talk to countries like Ecuador, Noboa, they want to say, where's an example of what you've done? So I say, well, come to Panama, come to Nicaragua. We'll show you what the community looks like, and this is a small model of what could be a free city. Right?
So when you're approaching governments, are you in this? I'm assuming your strategy is the kind of evolution of the economic zone. Is that where you're at?
Absolutely. And look, I think we are talking about terms that have a lot of overlap, but we are really not focused on sovereignty. It's at Tipolis, we're not. I really don't think even at Autris, full sovereignty is really what's wanted. I mean, that includes a lot of headaches that actually we're not interested in taking on. What this is much consistent with the Bitcoin ethos, is actually just decentralization of governance. It means the ability to make your own rules on a local level. We understand that there are certain things that must be done at a national level in whichever country we are. In fact, we would like to benefit from and even pay for, things like national defense and, international relations and diplomacy, that sort of thing. Rather, the question is more about what are the rules and regulations that a local people can choose to live by and live under. And one of the most effective mechanisms for that has really been the evolution of special zones that you've heard, probably from everyone on the Tipolis team and many others as well.
And that's really one of the places that's really applicable. It is in building, right? Building regs and things like that. Is it? I'm thinking of Prospera here and Morazan, and how obvious it is that you can build better, cheaper places if the regulation is under your own control.
Absolutely. I mean, we obviously have talked about doing Veritas Villages within Prospera as well. And
have you?
And so that would be
idea.
nice, because it could just, ask Eric, can I have the permit tomorrow? Right. So,
yeah.
Right. So that kind of thing is great. So, I mean, the biggest pain in my butt is permitting. Right? It's the thing that slows us down. It's the only real bottleneck we have. We're good at building. We know what we want, and we've been very lucky in that clients love what we're doing. There's the second biggest thing is inventory. I mean, I like to make sure we pick the right property before we just go ahead and build a Veritas Village. But once we find it, the only issue is permitting. So in a place like Prospera, where I don't have to ask the Honduran government, I just ask Prospera for a permit to go ahead, and they'll literally give it to you in a couple of days. That's a huge win.
Well, that's an important point to hit on, is that, okay, the permitting itself is very frustrating and difficult to go through and bureaucratic, but that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the time that it takes. Everyone talks about in real estate location. Okay, that's very important, yes, but time to execute, time to build is actually an incredibly important aspect to this, because you are typically parting with a lot of capital upfront to acquire a large piece of land. You need to develop it and then pay back any lenders or equity contributors for this. And the timing, if you're just sitting on, I have to outlay $20 million to buy this property, and I'm sitting on it then for 4 years going through permitting cycles, this is 4 years of lost returns, where I could have just put $20 million in the bank and gotten, even in today's environment, 4%, or I could have put half of it in Bitcoin and doubled my money, over the last 4 years, that sort of thing.
Yeah, time is everything for us. I mean, if I hadn't been lucky enough to have software companies in the past and be able to fund that time, and we have employees to pay, we have all sorts of office space and everything. So while we sit there, we're not sitting there, we're working hard every day, but lawyers, it's like an enormous amount of expenses. And, people think, oh, you must just be so easy. You just buy a piece of land and people love it because you're doing this freedom-oriented thing. It's like, there's nothing easy about it. Software business is way easier.
But when you say like building in Prospera, that doesn't mean Prospera the physical location, because Prospera can kind of like build Prospera in any kind of anywhere, not anywhere.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm more talking about the physical location, and we've talked to them about creating a Veritas. Obviously, we're very aligned in a lot of ways in the freedom thinking, and so we have no plans for it right now, but there's nothing that would be an issue. I think if we decide, okay, it'd be nice to have another community on the Caribbean. It's a beautiful place that Prospera has there. And if we wanted to go ahead and say carve out, whatever, 50 acres for us, and
but they want that, right? I mean, they're always saying, come on, bring your business here. Or like the Bitcoin district now, they've got a nomad district. I can't imagine they wouldn't want it.
Yeah, no, we have some talks about it, so.
What's quadratic voting then? Before we
well,
go?
Alex can probably do a much better scientific dive into it. My 2 cents on quadratic voting is by example and the practicality of it. So, the biggest issue I've seen in the years that I've been involved in building towns is that the HOA is always the problem, because Most developers are control freaks. We're not. We turn over the HOA to the community right away because I don't need any more headaches, or to be blamed for some decision that was made. But you either elect or appoint an HOA president, and their job is impossible. They can't please all the people all the time. And, human nature is to assume that when you didn't get your way, that person's got something in for you or whatever it is. So it's a horrible job. Anybody that's been an HOA president knows that. And you have to have pretty thick skin and all those things. And it creates a lot of anxiety in the community because then everybody's got something to bitch about, right? And so what originally the idea was, okay, we're going to use a DAO because it's basically transparent voting. And if you lost, you can say it has to have more than 50% on voting. So there's kind of two stages to it. Let's say every 7 items that get a reasonable amount of votes to be voted on, like say you have 2 tennis courts, we want a 3rd one. Well, okay, there's an example. Let's say, okay, well, let's put that to a vote. And then you can vote on the blockchain with the DAO. And it's, you can't say, oh, this one guy or this one woman didn't like me, so they decide not to. I like tennis and they don't, and so they decided not to put in a 3rd tennis court. It's the people's choice on a DAO. Now, quadratic voting, for me, makes it even more fair. Because basically, as an example, let's say you get 100 votes per year. So you, Tim, you like tennis. You're going to vote. You're going to cash in a few of your chips. You're going to say, I'm going to take 20% of my votes because that's important to me. And then I always have the same examples. I need to come up with some new ones. But people don't like roosters in their community, right? So they're making noise in the early morning. And I'm personally not a morning person, so I don't want a rooster waking me up at 5 a.m. So, but somebody doesn't care. They are morning people and they get up before the roosters, and that's fine. And they'll say, well, I may not even vote on this one, or I may use one of my votes, right? But in the tennis court, I'm using 20 or 25 or whatever. I'm 60. You can do whatever you want. Once your bank of votes is gone, that's it. So you got to,
Is that on a yearly basis?
Yeah.
So
that's just an example.
Them refreshed every year.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't bank them till next year and pile up 1,000 after 10 years or something. But
you'll get a load of people voting on New Year's Eve then.
Yeah, exactly.
But the interesting thing about it is that the quadratic voting is really a solution to the problem of the loud minority usually dictates the rules in almost anything. It is a way to effectively use mathematics in voting to understand how broad versus how deep the support for something is. And if something has deep support, what I mean by that is not so many people here want it. There's a proposal to build an opera house in the town, and it turns out that you and I, Tim, don't like it, but Patrick really likes it. This is not a public good at that point. It's really a private good. If Patrick wants it, he might vote a lot for it, but because he's going to put up all of his, merits or whatever, votes or whatever for it, they're going to get discounted down quite a bit. Versus if we say, well, we would like, a sidewalk to be able to take us, from the community center to, our neighborhood. All of us like that. And so we're all willing to put up, 5 votes for it rather than, 0, 0, and 100 for the opera house. Our voting of 5, 5, and 5, because it is broader, gets relatively elevated in terms of the value for the community. It's effectively a way to find out what is truly a public good, not the nonsense that's made up. Even in academia, I think it's nonsense, but then in popular parlance, public good is just like anything that I don't, know how I would personally finance myself.
And as a Citadel, Bitcoin Citadel company, you reckon that stuff you can do on Bitcoin now? Because I know this is the thing about a lot of the projects I've been to visit have basically used blockchains for various things, or DAOs and decision making, all that kind of stuff. And no one yet have I discovered who's been using Bitcoin. And most of them say it's because they didn't know how to do it. But
the Bitcoin blockchain doesn't. Doesn't lend itself to things like that expansion of like an NFT type of thing, which is really in a way what this is. But there's one that I'm looking at very closely right now called Rootstock, which is a Bitcoin sidechain, which has that base. If you look at it, it's got everything Bitcoin's got, and then it's got the ability to be used in a voting sense and that sort of thing. I guess you could vote with Bitcoin blockchain just by saying you have to put your Bitcoin into this vote. Sorry. But
Yeah, it might, but in 20 years' time, people might be spending like $100,000 to make a transaction.
I mean, I guess you could make it just simplistically on sats. Like it's one sat is one vote, but you can't vote more than X number of sats or something like that. So
no, but I agree. I think the sidechain or the layer.
Well, and the rootstock thing, the reason I like that is I wanted it to be like it's kind of like liquid or whatever, the different side chains that are side chains of Bitcoin, not Ethereum side chains.
Is it designed for decision making then, Rootstock?
It's really what it is, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Because I've never known what the answer to that was, because a lot of, like I say, every especially the intentional communities, they all create like a lot of them are creating a stable coin, or they're doing a DAO or whatever, and they're all doing them all kinds of weird and wonderful chains.
We got enough work to do. We don't need to create our own DAOs and DApps.
But also, if you're thinking long term, and if you're into, I suppose it's more. It depends how much into self sovereignty you are, because there is only one place where you really get censorship resistance, really, if you think, because all the other chains are owned by someone. There's a boss, there's a CEO, there's a this, and I've got less militant about it over the years, I must admit. When I first came in, it was like, no, you have to do everything with Bitcoin, because you're opening yourself up to there's attack vectors here if you don't do it on Bitcoin and that. But really, I'm not. Because like a lot of places use NFTs for their plots as well, and which is fine. But because that's a tool and you can use it and it's absolutely fine. But if you could do it in Bitcoin, it would be even better. It would be a lot better. But yeah, cool. Well, look, that is all pretty exciting. It's like you position yourself as a Bitcoin Citadel company. But that's new, because I know you've always been Bitcoiners.
That was kind of the title of our talk yesterday, which was Bitcoin Citadels, but Treasury was a big part of it, I guess. So
no, but I mean, I've kind of watched the evolution in a way. I think it's fair to say, Patrick, you're kind of working this out loud in many ways.
Absolutely.
Like you were building things, and then you realized, hold on a minute, I'm a libertarian. There's a lot of other people out there that actually are looking for this product. I can give it to them.
Well, we got my wife and I were in Belize on Ambergris Key, basically an island, when COVID hit. And, you get island fever at the best of times. You certainly get island fever when you're in lockdown and you can't get groceries there and that sort of thing. So that's where, I give credit to Andrea, my wife. A lot of it was her saying, we need to build one of these communities that is resilient to this kind of nonsense. Because she's a doctor, and it didn't take her very long to figure out that the rules that they were making for, if you sat down in a restaurant, you could take your mask off, but if you stood up to go to the bathroom, you had to put it on.
I think
stadiums were full of people, but the gyms were closed, and all those ridiculous rules.
It's weird
couldn't
to think
go to
back
the beach.
To all that shit.
Viruses don't really like UV light or salt water, but you couldn't go to the beach. No, it's crazy. Anyway, so when we decided this is nuts, and we've got authoritarian governments controlling what we're doing with no logic to it. Like, it would be nice if they were caring, but this is nothing caring about this. So then we said, well, let's actually formally not just build these communities that are kind of this way. It's like these are the pillars of our thought, and that's what they're going to be based on. And they're going to be, no wavering from that, because there will be COVID 2.0. I say it all the time. I don't actually think the next one's going to be a virus. I think it's going to be climate change related. It's going to be like the sunspots are bad this year. You have to stay inside, and we have to shut the economy down again. And I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be something ridiculous again. So in our communities, it'll be like Nicaragua kind of was during COVID, which is you don't have to wear masks. You don't have to get vaccinated if you don't want to. If a business decides that they need to wear a mask to go in them, then that's the business's choice, but you can decide not to go to that business then. So that, it was voting with their feet, people, right? So,
but public goods were, so you could walk down the street, no one's business. Only when you enter private property, then it's pure.
Then it's the private property's business, and I'm okay with that. Like, we want to be able to make our freedom-oriented rules inside of Veritas Villages, and if the guy next door wants to be a far leftist community, I don't care. You decide what you want. We're not going there.
Do you have a contract like Prospera? Do you have about what the kind of rules and the rules? Because you've got to have some rules, right?
Yeah, no, we have an HOA rules and regulations. That was another issue that, with the governments. I don't know why they care, but they do. I created an HOA document for Veritas Villages, take Panama, for example, and they wouldn't approve it. It's just like you need to, like even the little things like the HOA fee, how it's determined. For us, there's a formula because somebody can have a huge piece of property within our community and another person wants a small one with a tiny home on it. And the HOA fee just can't be purely size of lot because you still have 4 people living in either case, and it's how much of the amenities are they using. And so there's got to be some sort of formula. The government didn't allow that. They basically said, no, it's got to be pure square meter. This is like it's 10 cents per square meter per month. That's your formula. You decide if it's 10 cents or 12 or 14, but that's the formula. And I was like, why do you care? But they do. The nice thing about it, though, in Panama is the day that they stamp your HOA document, you can change it to whatever you want. Oh. So, at midnight that day is going to be totally different.
I was already trying to think of some workarounds there because you could just do that, but then you could add a strange kind of, not a tax, but you know what I mean, some fee that you have to pay on another, like how many people are living in your property, and then don't call it that. Yeah. But you don't even need to do that.
No, there's always being, brain straining creative ways to get around these things. But in this case, they gave us the out. So it's like, all right, here's the, copy and paste of what you want. And then tomorrow it'll be different.
That's the government doing
I think their point is, and I can only think of one, and that's that they don't want the developer deciding ridiculous HOA regulations. They want the people to, which I'm in favor of. So I, as the developer, Autris as the developer, has to make the first one because it's the only entity that can for day one. And so they have rules for that. But day 2, the people can decide to wipe out every clause in there and make a totally different one, which is exactly what will happen. We're already going to have document number 2 ready. So,
it's just another nanny state, effort. You get in the many of the developed countries, you get this in a different way. But in Latin America, you get lots of wage restrictions and how many holidays you have to have, and it's the same sort of thing. We have to protect you to make sure that you get what is right and fair. And if you make a wrong decision that might be better for your life, it's wrong because we think, we've decided it's not fair.
Yeah, and you have to understand where they came from. Most of them were socialists 20 years ago, right? So all these rules were created for the people, and by the nanny. Yep. And so they're working their way out of them. And it's difficult because a lot of those departments that are completely useless employ a lot of people. And so and what is the one thing a politician wants? He wants to get back into his job next time again, right? So if you start being like Millei, and even Millei, he cut a bunch of departments and rehired all those people into the remaining department. So it didn't really help the government cut costs that much. It just shuffled the deck. But
that guy that was speaking yesterday was getting nailed, wasn't he, about the central bank as well? Who was that? He is just so whoever's listening to this, one of the speakers yesterday.
Ivan Dubois. Yeah.
He worked with Millei in getting him into power, and he gave a speech at the conference yesterday. And someone asked about what happened to you were going to you were going to cancel the central bank. It's still there, and he gave an answer. And then the next question was, so what about the central bank?
I don't like your answer. Yeah, could you repeat it? The way I want to hear it.
Yeah, that was Massimo. He was like, yeah, hold a minute. Can you clarify that bit about the bank, please?
Yeah, the tough spot. The first question from Titus, unsatisfactory answer. Massimo follows it up.
But no, it's true, though. Come on. You can't blame him for entering this blob and not being able to move.
The same thing Trump faces, right?
Yeah. I think everyone does. Everyone does.
I have no issue with anything that is the result of the political constraints that he's in, and I don't pretend to be an expert in any of that. But this concept of we're now changing the policies of the central bank so that it's going to be used for the people and will never again be used against the people. This is complete nonsense.
Yeah. We better talk about the future then, or short to medium to long, up to you. But you've obviously got a plan. This is a lot of new. You know what? You're a Bitcoin Citadel company. I'm going to call you, not a Bitcoin Treasury company. I think you're a Bitcoin Citadel company. I think it's a better moniker. But
coined here. Free Cities podcast.
No, but it's true if you think about it. I don't know whether there are any Bitcoin Citadel companies, are there, really?
Not that I'm aware
No,
of.
I don't think there are. I mean, we'd know about them, right? There's Bitcoiners doing stuff, but I think, and I love this, and I think I've watched it evolve, but I think more and more the Bitcoin element is becoming part of the core idea. I mean, and I'm massively into all Bitcoin companies, like Bitcoin, we've got even the podcast, we've got it on the balance sheet, it's like, it's the 21st century way to run a business. You have to have a treasury.
Yeah. Well, yesterday somebody was trying to convince me that Bitcoin is not the future and it's going to collapse and all that. There's still a lot of people out there that believe that, and even somebody at this conference, and
Sure.
which is surprising to me because I was talking about in Panama alone. Now, El Salvador has gone 100%, in my opinion, the right direction, and struggled with it a bit. But now Bukele looks like a hero, given the fact that Bitcoin's up, 10 times from when he started acquiring it. But even in Panama, they're all Panama, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, they were all laughing at El Salvador in the past, right? It's like, what, this guy is crazy. Now, I paid my taxes for my condo property taxes in Panama City with Bitcoin. You're allowed to do that now.
Can you?
Yeah. And
To the government? You can pay to the government?
The mayor of Panama City is, what's that?
City government.
City government, yes. The municipality of the city, basically. But a couple of years ago, Tower Bank, one of the banks, Panama is the financial center of pretty much Central America, Latin America, and there's hundreds probably of banks there. Tower Bank is the first one that came out and said, okay, you can have stable coin in your account. Basically, you can have a USDT account, I believe it was. And so I could literally, suddenly had an on-ramp and off-ramp in a bank in Panama, which is cool. And all the other banks ostracized them. You can do ACH transfers within Panama, and they all took Tower Bank off of their ACH transfers as punishment for this crypto-friendly bank. However, Tower Bank quickly got all the customers. Every expat that was moving there was opening a Tower Bank account because suddenly they had this combined thing that they'd never had before. And just this last few months, Caja de Oros is another bank there, and they just became crypto-friendly. There's 2 or 3 other ones, so they realized they were just losing business by not allowing Bitcoin, right? So and now Tower Bank has taken it one step further past stable coins. You actually get a QR code and you can transfer Bitcoin directly into your US dollar account. It converts and everything. So it's you can buy Bitcoin through it, and so it's pretty cool.
I can't believe that the local government are accepting it for.
Well, the mayor of Panama City is extremely progressive. When I use progressive in a good way, like not the way North Americans think of progressive these days. It's not woke. It's like actually a forward-thinking guy. He's very Bitcoin friendly, and doing things with putting money where his mouth is.
Well, the other very interesting kind of relatively new kind of Bitcoin thing that's happening is using it as collateral, which you can see absolutely exploding at the moment, and people now talking very normal financier types talking about it as pristine collateral and stuff like that. And it's very easy to predict that in the future, this is going to be like one of the most massive elements of being a Bitcoin holder, which is why obviously everyone should be stacking a bit, whether it's you, your company, your business, whatever,
Yeah, I think the banks
that's a big strategy for the Bitcoin Treasury company over the long term. I think we're a little too early. We saw Strategy got a credit rating, and they effectively just simply subtracted out the Bitcoin capital.
Yeah.
In terms of the,
it was a bit disappointing. Was it B- or something?
Triple B-, which was just about junk status, which, look, I'm sure they have formalities and this is why it happened the way that it did. But from any honest perspective, it's therefore an irrelevant rating because it's not analyzing the nature of the company, which is that it has over 5% of the Bitcoin supply. And I think that in the future, if you're a company, this is the sort of thing as Bitcoin moves towards being accepted as pristine collateral, which I'm not quite sure I would say it is at the moment because it is volatile. Otherwise, it has all the great qualities. I think it's moving towards that. As that happens, if you have a company that has Bitcoin on your balance sheet, you can immediately go out and get a loan like, snap of your fingers. You don't even have to present business plans. You don't even have to present, credit ratings, any of this sort of stuff. You just sign a show on chain. Here, I've got X Bitcoin, and therefore I can get 50% of this in a loan, or 25% of this in a loan, no problem.
Well, and also 2 companies now are offering or are about to offer personal credit lines against Bitcoin collateral, which is incredible. I mean, that you can see that's, I was thinking it through the other night about what you could do with that. So you have a credit line based on, say, 50% loan to value with your Bitcoin, and so you can you use it like a credit card. You just spend a bit. You don't want to basically, because most of the companies at the moment, they require you to borrow, like say 50 grand over the year. You don't want to borrow 50 grand. You want to borrow maybe £700 to pay a bill or something, or $700 or whatever. And it's amazing. I mean, it's really so exciting to think that, especially if you've been stacking for a while, it's so fortunate that, we do think how lucky everyone was who heard about it within the last sort of 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and suddenly now all these opportunities are there and we were opening up. And same with companies. And I'm not saying it's too late by any stretch of the imagination. It's not. Get some on your balance sheet, especially if you're raising money, get it on your balance sheet,
I was talking to somebody about the butterfly effect in my life of Bitcoin. Right? So back in 2010 or 11, when Bitcoin was actually 50 cents, somebody told me about it. Said, you're a technical guy, you're in software, you should buy a bunch of Bitcoin. It's like, well, what is this stuff, right? So I started looking at it and I went, yeah, I'm going to buy 1,000 Bitcoin for $500. Right? Today that would be $100 million or whatever. Yeah. But I was in Canada. It was almost impossible to open a wallet at that point. I called my buddy in the States to get to open a wallet. I was going to say, look, I'll give you 500. I'll keep 500 just to get this wallet because it's in the States. He was away and didn't answer, and I just didn't do it. Right?
Oh, shit.
But then I think about Veritas Villages wouldn't exist. Right? Who knows what would have been different. Like I wouldn't have the incentive to do that. So I'm proud of what we're doing now. So I guess maybe in the long run, that was a good thing. And I have a little bit of Bitcoin now, not 1,000 of them, unfortunately.
Dude, I'm not sure not having 100 million is a great thing. But I mean, I appreciate what you say. You may not be doing what you do now, but who knows what you'd be doing with 100 million as well.
I guess the truth is I could have funded a lot of different things along the way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree with you though. Like there is a curse to having to getting a large, vast amounts of money. I think about this a lot with my children because I have a plan for them and it's a Bitcoin plan, and who knows actually what it might turn into. Your Bitcoin plan now might turn into an absolutely astronomical amount of money. It depends what the timeline is in the future, and that could be damaging. So like locking it up, putting sort of cryptographic stipulations on it and stuff like that. They're all quite important things to actually think about.
Yeah, I mean, even now, I look at Autris and the market cap on Autris is a significant amount. But I've always been with my 3 children, they didn't like it when they were younger. Like they we did all right with selling a software company and lived in a nice house and everything, but that's about where it stopped. They had to get a job to buy their own car, and while their friends, it was a bit of a nice neighborhood, so their friends were getting BMWs at 16 years old as, their 16th birthday gift. And my kids were not. My kids were working at McDonald's so they could buy a, Honda Civic or something at 20 years old. And so they weren't happy about that. But now they are. And, all 3 of them are capitalist people that are doing really well on their own. And it's the same thing you're saying with your kids. Even if you have the ability to leave them a lot, I'm not sure that's a good thing without certain rules, at least. If all of a sudden you get millions of dollars dumped in your lap, it doesn't matter who you are. It's probably not going to do great things for your life.
Well, the funny thing about Bitcoin is over the very long term, anything could happen. Literally. I mean, there is one timeline where it goes to an actual astronomical amount of money for one Bitcoin, doesn't it? And it's not that unlikely, actually, when you look at it. So, and if your kids, that means by the time they're 40 or 50, who knows? They might have to have a family office just if you from something you had in a wallet on your phone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like some 11-year-old has right now. And
well, no, my daughter, my middle daughter, for a while, she started. I've always talked to them about Bitcoin, and about 4 or 5 years ago, I really started trying to get them when they got to a certain age. And she started taking her pocket money, which was £2 a week. She started taking it in Bitcoin. She has amassed more than £2,000 worth of Bitcoin now by age 9, she had amassed more than £2,000 worth of Bitcoin, because she doesn't spend it on anything. She's the middle child. She kind of likes money's the only thing she can really own. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like everything else, she has to share, or she gets given things and all this kind of stuff.
She's natural low time preference. This is great.
Yeah, exactly. But probably if she doesn't spend, I don't think she will. I don't know whether she'll spend it. She doesn't really want anything. That's the funny thing, But because now she started a business. We've got chickens, and she sells the eggs to us. I said, look, I'll do you a deal
for Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course. Because she doesn't spend her money on anything. And I say to her, look, don't hold your money. She likes having a few £20 notes and stuff in her safe or whatever. But
in 10 years, she can come work at Veritas Villages.
Good. She'd love that, I'm sure. Right. Future. And what's happening now? Like, are you raising money? Are you doing what? Like, obviously the Treasury strategy is there for a reason and stuff,
Yeah, maybe I'll speak to the short term, and then the longer vision. Let's hear from Patrick. The short term part of the acquisition of BitCorp, and consistent with all the press releases that we've put out, a part of that is a fundraise for Autris. We're raising $30 million. The purpose of that is for 3 separate functions. One is currently Autris is trading on the OTC ID. Pink slip over-the-counter stock exchange. We would like to uplist to an exchange that is somewhat easier to access for the normal people that would like to potentially buy some shares in Autris, but find it very difficult, in the current exchange. Increase the volumes and liquidity and that sort of thing, so that the common person could easily get in or get out as they like. That's the first step. The second step is actually to just purchase quite a volume of Bitcoin, really start growing the balance sheet and have it there for, what is our long-term view will be, worth substantially more over the, call it 10, 20-year time horizon. And then the third aspect of it is to help Autris expand its current business. They are able to execute on all the strategies they have with relatively, lean operations and a relatively tight balance sheet. But that requires extra discipline. It requires, being very rigorous about which purchase of land on what timeline, what are the sort of contingencies related to it. Having a bit more capital available lets the operation expand and potentially into do multiple new expansion countries at one time is, something that would be very nice. So that's sort of call it the 6 to 18 month time horizon, working on these 3 things.
As far as a longer term goal, Alex touched on it with his third point. We have been organically growing. We take profits from one of the communities and bury it into building infrastructure and buying more land and so on. But we obviously, it's a hugely nice problem to have, but we have more demand than we have inventory for most of the time. And the demand is growing. I wasn't sure, to be honest, after, call it the panic of COVID sort of started slowing, down, and it has actually increased. I think people are getting another sense again that, there's enough. Well, you can look at the UK and, the flight of, I think Titus's first opening presentation at the conference was on the millionaires leaving places, right? And fortunately, we're one of the places they're looking at to go to. And, we're pretty much in zero tax dollar regions and locations, so that's nice for a lot of people that have just getting beat up by their authoritarian governments. So I would like to expand faster, and we'd like to have the property in Argentina, like to have a property in Mexico, Ecuador, and then beyond Latin America as well. We focus on Latin America right now. Some of the main reasons are it's kind of a live and let live area. You've been, I think you've lived in Salvador for a little while, or in Mexico, so you know what it's like. It's a very nobody's going to bother you about anything, right? So that's kind of the foundation of where to build a community like that. But there's other places in Asia and things like that with the same kind of thoughts, and so that and other places. I was, not that I want to have a community in Kazakhstan, but I was just in Kazakhstan and I was pleasantly surprised that it was a nice place, and Kyrgyzstan, Bishkek and Almaty, and it was just a little tangent here, but in Canada, at least, I don't know what it was like growing up in the UK or the US, but in Canada, we were always taught that we were just like the best place on earth, right? And everything else is lesser. Like not in an arrogant way, friendly people and things, but just like a quiet pride. We're the little brother to the north of the US, but really we're like kind of the US, but better. That's what they think, right? And then you're taught things like, Central Asia is just a shithole, right? Basically. And then I would encourage people to go to all sorts of places. Like, every time I do that, I realize, everything I was told was not even close to right. Right? And when I first went to Nicaragua with my children, friends in Canada all panicked and thought, you're all going to get kidnapped. And it's like, it's actually safer than Canada in a lot of ways. So, So anyway, the expansion of the communities, the Veritas Villages, I'd like to do faster. I don't want to do it at a pace where we, lose the philosophy of what we're all about. But there is a demand for it, and I feel like, my purpose, in life right now is to create these oases for people, right? And it was originally just it came up with my wife and I talking about it as oasis for us and our friends and family if there was going to be a next COVID, but that's expanded a lot since then.
Great. Sounds great. Not financial advice, but one might predict that Autris shares are undervalued, potentially.
I'm not really allowed to say where I think it's going, but I'm not going to argue with you on that.
No, I was just thinking it through as you were speaking, and there you go. Right, guys, very much interesting and exciting, and thanks for coming in, and good luck with everything. Of course, I'm a big fan. I've watched the progress over since the first time I met you, and I just think it's a kick-ass idea. That I think what I like about it the most is that it's a brilliant idea, and it arose out of a market demand. Yeah. Which that's how you start a business. That's how you should start a business.
Yeah, I'm surprised there hasn't been more.
Yeah,
we don't really have a lot of competition, and we have 2 or 3 copycats, and even the DAO idea for the HOA. I noticed, other companies doing that now, and I guess that's the best form of,
Are the other companies libertarians?
Some of them, I would say, but the one that I'm thinking, I won't mention any names. One that's just copies us. Like every time we put out a press release or do some kind of marketing, it's a mirror and to look into what they do. The thing is that they're not libertarian. They don't really believe in the philosophy of the freedom and self-sustainability and all that sort of stuff. And so customers see through that pretty quickly. So
No, but the community is a massive part of your thing anyway, isn't it? You've got a community. I don't think that these things would even necessarily work without a community, because especially when you're making a network of places which kind of have benefits, that's the whole point of them, really. Amongst other things, is like that there's a community involved in it, and you can't fake the community. And in fact, in the ones that don't have the community, they're going to be like holiday home places, aren't they? That just end up being, I don't know, they end up being ghost towns a little bit sometimes. Yeah.
And the best thing about our communities is having a glass of wine, watching the sunset, and all the people that you can talk to, and you're not censored. You don't have to feel worried about what you're going to say. I don't want just people to think like me around me, but I'd rather not hang out with radical leftists. So
rather not. Great. All right. Well, thanks, Alex and Patrick. It's nice to see you again, and thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Tim. It's always good to be on your podcast, and appreciate you being on mine a few months ago. I think we'll have to do another version of that too. So. Whenever you're ready, mate. I'm there. I enjoy talking to you. All right. Thank you.